So thank you for your time, Katy, and welcome to HerCanberra Chats, which is the name I just made up then and there. Let's talk about Labor's reform package. And the last time that PBS medicines were capped at $25 was 2004. What were you doing back in 2004? What are your recollections? Or is it too far back to even remember?
Well, it's lovely to be here with you, Emma, as well. And nice to see you. 2004, I kind of map backwards my life in what was happening with my children, which
Yes.
is probably a bit sad. And it's only for that period of time when, the kids were young. But Abby, my eldest, would have been almost 7. And 2004, that was my first turn as seeking re-election. And I remember it in terms of elections. So that's sad as well. Children and elections. 2004, we won majority government under
First
John
time, yeah,
Stanhope.
first time for the
And
ACT.
last time, it
Yeah.
seems.
Oh,
It hasn't
okay.
happened since. So that's it. It's a while ago, though.
Yeah, I was just doing a bit of a deep dive last night, and I'm going to tell you some other things that happened in 2004. Facebook was launched. That's both a good and a
Yeah.
bad thing, isn't it? Probably. Anyway, Play School played its famous Two Mums.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
That
do you
was
remember
pretty
that?
controversial at the
Huge, yeah.
time.
Mary Donaldson became a princess.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it's
God, she
crazy.
seems like she's always been a
Yeah.
princess. Yeah, in our mind.
Rove won the gold Logie. Peppa
Hmm.
Pig aired in Australia for the first time. Steve Irwin dangled teeny tiny 1-month-old Bob
Oh,
on his hip
yes.
when he fed the croc.
Yeah,
And look at
it's very visual.
Robert now.
I
Yeah, do you remember
know.
that? I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had John Stanhope winning first majority Labor government. Shannon Knowles, What About Me, was on the charts.
Oh, so that was
You
post
would have
his,
remembered the original What About Me, wouldn't you? Moving pictures.
probably.
And locally, Water's Edge was our top-ranked restaurant.
Oh, yeah.
Aubergine was on the rise, and
Mhm.
Cream was a cafe in Civic that everyone was raving
Yeah,
about that I've long since forgotten. So,
yeah, I remember
yeah,
all of that
yeah,
now that you've reminded me.
yeah, absolutely. All right. Back then, did you ever imagine that you would reach a stage in your political career where you could have such a massive impact on women's health?
Well, the answer to that is no. But I feel like my whole career has been a bit like that. It's twists and turns and opportunities and setbacks, and I've kind of just gone
With the
where that
flow.
journey has taken me. With a few moments where I've had to make hard decisions about, do I stay, do I go, what do I do? Do I go from the ACT to federal politics, which had never really interested me because I loved being local and being so close to things. But
What got you across the line to move to the big house?
well, it was a couple of things. It was one that I really felt the decisions that the federal government were making were impacting us here. So it was a bit of that was the Tony Abbott government. It was around that time where a lot of the funding agreements were being just torn up, and as a health minister, I was in a fair bit of despair about that. So it was really, I guess, the first time I'd felt that really significant impact of job cuts and through the public service, and then the other decisions they were taking. So there was that made me kind of feel angry about some of those decisions. And then it was also Kate Lundy was retiring, and I think at the time Bill Shorten, Penny Wong, Anthony Albanese all rang me and said, would you come and join our Senate team? So I think it was those two. And I did feel that I'd been around a long time in the ACT government, and the job never ends. Like, it
Yeah.
just never ends. You think it does. Like, when this project finishes, it'll be a nice time to think about next steps, but that isn't the job it is. So I think I'd come to realise that as well. When is a good time to go?
Yeah. Now, do you think that you are in a particular sweet spot, being both finance minister and women's minister?
Yes, definitely. And I think I've learnt since I was appointed in May 2022, I think I've learnt how important that decision was as it's gone on. Like, I don't think in May 2022 I realised the
How
power that
significant?
came from putting those two portfolios together. But now that I've sat around the ERC table, that I understand how budgets are put together, it's really clear to me that the power of putting them together has enabled us to deliver a much more significant impact, I think, not just in one area, not just like in women's wages or, single parenting payment increases, so not kind of in payments, but also in the way the government thinks about how do we address some of the inequality that exists. And I'm kind of sitting there looking at the thing from both portfolios, not with someone else coming in at the end.
Yeah. How receptive were your colleagues and your male colleagues to quarantining $790 million in the budget for the largest ever women's health package that the country's seen?
Well, they were really good.
Did you have
Okay.
to fight for it?
Well, I think you have to fight for everything around the ERC table. But one thing that's made, and again, I've been knocking around politics long enough now to notice what it's, or to know what it was like when there was no women to what it is
Yeah.
now. The cabinet is gender equal, so it's not as if we're battling. There's one voice and a lot
Yeah.
against it, and that has really changed in my time in politics. Very heartening.
Well, that's instructive, isn't it? That
Mm.
there's power and respect in numbers.
Totally.
So if we can do that in Parliament, maybe we need to do it in companies and
Yeah, for sure.
services for the rest of the country.
Yep. It
Yeah.
makes a huge difference. And having Jim, I work closely, obviously, with Jim Chalmers as treasurer. I couldn't have a more supportive kind of partner in, not crime, partner in putting budgets together than him, because he brings a kind of egalitarian lens to pretty much everything he does. And he also recognises the kind of economic power of equality. I mean, because we see it in all the data where it doesn't exist, the outcomes aren't as good.
Yeah. So did you feel you could have maybe gone a bit harder and got a bit more, or you were like, how was it?
Well, I think the job's never done. That is the genuine thing I feel in politics. So we got this package, but I know that there's more to do, and there
Yeah.
is. The health system, like many others, was built by men and kind of was structured around their needs. And so when you look at it, and that's again symptomatic of a male workforce and the decisions that are taken by people around the table. And I think that changes when you have a bit more gender balance. And so when you're looking at the health system, I mean, it's just nuts to me that for 30 years we didn't list a new contraceptive pill on the PBS, 20 years for menopause treatments. And so what that said as a society is, well, you can have the inferior. If you're going to have it subsidised by the taxpayer, you have the inferior one, even though we know there's Yaz and Yasmin and Slinda and all these other ones that actually have less side effects and are better,
Yeah.
but we're not going to subsidise them for you. I think breaking all of that kind of structural inequality down is an ongoing work. There's still much more to do.
Yeah, but it's a pretty good kickoff.
It's a start. Yeah.
Yeah. You've put menopause, endometriosis, UTIs, pelvic pain, and the financial impost on women who are generally responsible for contraception and certainly mostly pay for their own pill prescriptions. You put that on the national agenda. Why weren't we talking? Why has there been this level of squeamishness or embarrassment to talk about women's health? Because that's just been a general thing for forever.
Totally. I mean, we've kind of gone through similar phases in our lives of having children and then, teenagers, and now in this stage of our lives. I think I can't sort of, there's not a moment in time which said, you're not allowed to talk about menopause, but I think we were just all brought up that this is something you go through on your own or you talk to your
Quietly,
friends
and you're
about
not
it. Yeah, and
complaining.
you're a bit
Yeah.
lost and also that it's diminished as, if you take menopause, you're just meant to get on with it like women do in so many other areas. And I think this acknowledgement that it is hard and you should be taking medical advice, that there are treatments available, that you don't have to go through hot flushes and feeling like you're losing your memory and all these other
And your
kind of
mind.
and your mind.
Wanting
And,
to murder people.
yeah, I mean, all of those beautiful, things that come and in many ways hit you and make you feel like you're a different person to what you were,
Yeah.
and that there are all these supports available. I just think it's amazing, and it's so good when I look at my daughters and even young girls today. I think, imagine what it'll be like when you come to where we are right now, where we
Yeah.
are really breaking down a lot of stigma, or trying to,
Yeah.
and reach women and also support women.
What was your own menopause journey like, and what would have helped you? Or did you feel that you sort of where it wouldn't have been so long ago that you wouldn't have been without? I mean, that we have been talking about it more generally, but what would have been better for you personally?
I think more education about particularly perimenopause. I hadn't really thought about it. And I also thought, because I hadn't had a lot of problems, like I'd never had endo, managing my periods had been fine. I think I just was in this mistaken view that I'm just going to sail through that part of my life as well. And so definitely could have benefited from more information and understanding about what was going on. And then, it's like when you get pregnant or some life event happens and you get let into this secret group that exists that you didn't know existed.
Absolutely.
And I really felt that when I first got pregnant, and women started going, oh, and then this happens and then this
Yeah.
happens. And I was like, oh, there's this whole world that I wasn't included in before this. It's the same with menopause.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and I work with a lot of women my age, so we have a lot of fun actually with it as well. Like if we're in the cabinet room and I'll just go, is there anyone hot in here, or or am I actually going mad? And then I'll get a few nods like, it is a little bit warm. But
Something happened to me recently that made me realize how male parliament is, because I froze in that building for 13 years, just froze. We all know the air
mm,
conditioning is
mm, I have a
absolutely,
heater under my desk.
yeah. So when I was at the Governor General's recently, I was like, oh, I can take my coat off. All the men were sweating, all the women were so happy. I
Mm,
was like, she's done that on purpose.
I'm
She's
sure.
subverting from within.
Yeah.
It was notable. All right, but back to the questions. Let's talk about how supporting women's health and reproductive health. How does it help the country more broadly? Because it's a product. At the end of the day, it's a productivity issue, isn't it?
Yep.
And Menopause Health Australia, they said there's a $22 billion cost to the economy relating to women, managing symptoms, retiring early, thinking they're, losing their minds, losing their confidence at work, and, making choices based on something that could be managed more better,
Mm.
more well.
Yeah, so when we were looking at the women's health package, we did have it. I'm trying, as part of our kind of economic um, equality agenda as well. Like, I think the minute we start, I don't want to get in discussions about, oh, you're doing too much for women. This is about trying to create equality across the economy and the community.
It's an easier sell, isn't it, to
Well,
say
yeah.
it's
Well, it's
about
hard to
all of
argue
us.
with.
Yeah.
It's hard to argue when you say, well, if we have more women working and more women working the hours they want, and that's supported by a childcare system that works for them, then your business is better off, and that household's better off. It's harder to argue with. And we think about health in exactly the same way. If we're able to support women in a more cost effective way, I mean, some of these women were accessing these medications, but they were paying for it out of pocket because they were
Yeah.
better for them, and often, for their individual circumstances, were more suitable than the ones on the PBS. So we know even with 60-day dispensing now and some of the new treatments and being capped at $25, instead of spending $100 on a medication, it can cost you $25 because you're getting 2 months and it used to be
Yeah.
$50 off the PBS. Now, that makes a huge difference to household budgets, probably supports you to feel better and your health's
Yeah.
better, supporting you to look after your family better, and also hopefully be able to participate
Mm.
in the economy in a way that works for you. I'm not
Because,
saying everyone should go to work. That might not be
yeah.
right for everybody, but there's a whole lot of other things women do.
Yeah, and there would have been, for some women, the cost would have been the deciding factor in whether they would take medication.
For sure.
Yeah.
I
So
mean, because it's
that's,
not something, we wish we only had to take 1 month of it and we're all
yeah, we're on it for life.
cured of menopause symptoms, but that's not how it works. And so
Yeah.
it's the ongoing costs. And it's also things like accessing healthcare, like UTIs, for example, being able to, and the states are moving in this area really well, to have a chemist be able to give you antibiotics if you
Yeah.
have a UTI in a safe way with lots of protocols.
Yeah.
You
And the
know,
nurse is able to prescribe, and
exactly.
yeah, the move to telehealth. Yeah, these are all things that make it easier for women
Yeah,
to manage so many things.
exactly.
Yeah. What's been the feedback since it
It's
started to?
been so positive. Like, out of all the things we've done, like, we've driven the gender pay gap down, we've published gender pay gaps across companies. Women are earning more because of the increases in early childhood education and aged care that we've been pushing. So we've been doing all of that at a lot bigger cost than the health package. A lot bigger investment. I try not to talk about cost. Um, but this one has really, it's the one that has, like, it's in your face for women. And I get a lot of feedback when I'm at the chemist or wherever, people, particularly women my age, thanking me for even access to some of these treatments.
Yeah.
But also for younger women, like, I've got daughters, they have to manage their health. Being able to think about that in all their friendship group, like, it's something people are talking about, which is great.
Yeah. So you think it will be different for your girls?
I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope they don't feel that they have to. Well, they won't have to break down some of the structures because we're trying to do that. Hopefully they get the benefit of that. I'm sure, like, I know there'll be more to do for their generation, but hopefully we are shifting the dial.
Yeah. Yeah. In terms of the feedback, was there any? I just wondered, were there any men out there questioning such a large, because it is a lot of money and it's big news and it's lots of headlines. Were they questioning such a large investment of their taxpayer dollars into women?
I mean, I'm sure there were I try not to read
Yeah,
a lot of comments that are made, particularly on my social media posts, but I think, again, I'm trying to come at it from, it's not an either or, it's not women or men. It's trying to fix the system where it doesn't work for
yeah,
people. And so we have Dan Repicoli, who's the first, it's a first in Australian federal politics anyway. He's the Assistant Minister for Men's Health, because there are areas where we need to work on inequality for men in the health system too, because the system isn't static, and it is actually, but issues around it for people aren't static. They move, and so the health system needs to move with it. But largely, I think the feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. A woman shouted at me when I was walking down the street the other day going, "Thanks for my XXX, her medication." And
estrogen.
yeah, it was just like, yeah, I think it is we know that I think over 600,000 women have accessed either the menopause or the contraceptive listings in almost 2 million scripts. So we know it's having
Yeah.
pretty good reach.
Yeah. So your girls, at the very least, are going to grow up in communities where it's an open topic of conversation. Because my mum never talked about it. I
Mm.
never talked about it with her. You have these open conversations. It is, the shame and the stigma has really, really been reduced. So that's the good thing. If you could wave your magic policy wand for one other thing that you would think that your girls would really benefit from, maybe not in the health sphere, but is there something that you think would be just wonderful to be able to fix?
It would be violence against women, without a doubt, because I see, I work with Tanya Plibersek on this. I see all the data coming in, and it affects everything. It affects women's housing, women's health, women's economic security, women's ability to work, women's ability to have safe relationships across the board. If there was one thing that would drive gender equality in this country, it would be dealing with that. And I
Yeah.
know I say that it's a hard test to meet, because it's so prevalent and it's changing all the time too. So, you know, while we make inroads, say, in some areas in domestic and family violence, we see sexual violence against women skyrocketing, and particularly young women. We see some of the effects of, social media and w- young men's access to violent pornography, and young people's access to violent pornography, and seeing the impacts of that, the stalking that's going on, the surveillance that's going on. So as we're kind of dealing with more traditional, physical violence and the harm that causes, at the same time we're seeing all this terrible stuff on that's kind of coming into being with modern technology.
Does it
And
feel overwhelming?
sometimes the challenge, it's hard to say we will end this. We will reach that point where we can say young women and all women are, able to go around their lives being safe. I think, to me, I don't say that because I think that is hard to get to that point if we're being entirely honest. And so, but that shouldn't stop our drive to get to that point,
Yeah.
or to focus on it and to continue to meet it, whether it comes. I mean, when you read stories about how, and I'm doing this piece of work in government too, about how our systems are weaponised to perpetuate violence, you can see how deep some of the problems are. Like, you can weaponise the child support system so you don't pay child support and you keep your kids and your former partner in poverty for their entire adult life, or, going up to 18. You can, and we have to fix that, and we will. But that's just one of the problems, being able to surveil your partner, whether they leave the house, whether they're allowed the heating or cooling on, whether you can access the fridge, all of these systems that are now being weaponised. And,
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't lose my resolve or anything like that, but it does, it frustrates me, and it is complex. And we need a lot more effort to change it. And it's
Yeah.
not a government effort, because it's a whole, we're part of it and we have to lead on it, but it's a whole of society problem.
What sort of conversations happen within the party room and within the corridors of power every time a woman is murdered? And I'm thinking of Sophie Quinn and
Yeah.
her unborn baby and her aunt and her friend.
Well, there's a lot of discussions. There is it's something. I mean, Tanya has portfolio responsibility for it, but we work very closely together. Her and I, we're two senior women in a parliament that has a majority government with women members. So you can imagine. But I'm not saying that the men aren't involved in that either. They are. And I mean, it's just, I think, understanding fully the Commonwealth's role, like what are the areas, and
Yeah,
we
what
think a
can we
lot
do?
of these, like the things we've been talking about, health, housing, good pay for all those jobs that have never been paid properly, that is part of it. Because if women have more money, are able to have more choices, are able to have a childcare system that works for them, are able to get into housing that works for them, access healthcare without being bankrupted, or having to take a less optimal medication because you don't have the
Yeah.
money. If we're fixing or trying to fix all of those, that's got to have an impact. Because we know that kind of control and coercive control can be weakened if women have more independence.
Yeah. I know that as Minister for Women and Finance Minister that you'd have a pretty huge mental load on many, many things. But does the violence does it take a special spot in your head? Do you feel it personally?
Oh yeah, I don't think you could work in these jobs and it's not just the ones that make the headlines; it's all the others.
Mm.
And it's also the briefs I get from women that say the system is working against me. I've tried to do all the right things. I left. I was brave, or I found a way through, because there's many brave women that stay as well. And then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and I kind of give up. And so for me, I read all of those letters, and I never, I think you'd have to get out of the job if you kind of read those letters and went, oh,
And didn't
well,
feel,
there's
yeah,
nothing I can do here.
yeah,
Like, that's why we're now looking at all of our systems and how they can get weaponized. I mean, one thing is, you can, in child support, is if you ask for a review of your child support arrangements, that can involve you having to share your address with a former partner. And, think that's our requirement that you do that, can put women in danger. And so I feel like we've got to clean up our house and get it in order as we are expecting the whole of society to kind of deal with this
Mm.
problem.
A friend of mine, just off the record, a friend of mine was at the Commonwealth Bank when she discovered the financial abuse,
Mm,
those little messages that,
mm,
20,000 men just saying, I'll kill you or something,
yeah,
using 1 cent donations to do that. And,
yeah,
she's now given up her day job and she's, formulating ways and policies
yeah,
designed to
right.
disrupt and to stop that sort of thing
And the
happening.
banks have been like I
Yeah,
went
they
in,
jumped on board.
they've been
Yeah.
so good.
Yep.
I went to a session with them through how they sort of pick up scams and unusual behaviour and violence, domestic violence was one of their priorities, showing me how they use all these AI tools and other things to identify where this kind of
Mm.
violence is happening. But yeah, it's like, guys, honestly, there isn't an area of life that it doesn't seem that can't be weaponized. Like the surveillance stuff is really disturbing.
Yeah.
And especially with a generation that are all on Snapchat and all know where each other is at all times. And like
Yeah.
that's something that was very different to
Yeah.
our childhood. You didn't have that. So almost like surveillance or monitoring of each other is part of this generation's DNA, but
Yeah.
it can so easily morph into something more dangerous.
Sinister.
And people, I think, think, oh well, that's pretty normal, and it's not.
Yeah. What did your safety survey reveal to you? Probably nothing.
Um,
Nothing
I
surprising.
think, well, it was great in that so many people filled it out, but also disheartening in that some of the issues that I felt when I was younger and living in Canberra
Haven't
are
changed.
still,
Yeah.
like people. I mean, I used to, like, I think my mum told me to walk with your keys through your hand. I honestly don't know what I would do if something, like,
Yeah.
I'm not sure but it was something you did because you felt scared.
Yeah.
And to read stories of people, particularly people who come to Canberra as young adults, still have that experience. A lot of them, just wanting to be taken seriously, I think, and not patted on the head and told
Yeah.
it's fine. You don't, Canberra's a safe city. I mean, feeling safe versus being safe are different things.
Mm.
And so I think taking women seriously about these things, we've got some money to light up Lake Burley Griffin because that was a big feedback. Like, can we light some of these places so we can exercise at night
Yeah.
and feel safer?
Because we're so busy during the
Yeah,
day looking after
yeah,
our kids and doing our jobs,
yeah.
and we do want to try and do some exercise. Yeah.
But we rule things out because, oh, a friend can't go with you or you can't park your car there.
Yeah.
And these are all things that I don't think many men think about that often because it hasn't been part of the way that they've had to think about their
Mm.
own safety, but we think about it all the time. So there are some things we can do there for sure.
Mm. On the topic of smashing the patriarchy, which is something that we all want to do, and we talk about it a lot. But what do you see in more practical terms? How do we change this bizarre? It feels like, as you said, the systems are still able to be weaponized, and we still haven't achieved equality in so many areas.
Mm,
What do we need? How do we really, I guess, restructure gender relations so that it's not us versus them, that the men are on board? You mentioned, having a men's
mm.
health advisor. Do we need a minister for men to be responsible for helping men stop being violent to women or take, greater responsibility of the domestic load? What?
I think there's genuinely something in acknowledging uh, that men aren't all responsible and have many issues themselves that they're dealing with. And this kind of, I've got
Mm,
a son as well, so I've watched him grow up through school, and I've seen the pressures that boys are under, which is
yeah.
quite different to watching my eldest daughter go through. And so this kind of concept of masculinity and how you find your place, like what type of man are you, I think is, and I don't think we should underestimate actually that or trivialize it. And in a way, it's a similar thing to how women were treated for a long time when they were putting their hands up and being patronized and told that, oh, everything's fine in your life. So I genuinely think you'll see more focus as in politics. We've got Dan, as I said, as assistant minister working to the health minister on men's health, because that's a huge issue. But I think there's definitely more we can do there. And I think increasingly in women's safety and discussions about violence against women, sort of perpetrator accountability is a big part of the conversation, but so is respectful relationships, and how do we challenge some of the gender norms, some of the stereotypes that are kind of continuing to be perpetuated. Many will say we've got to do more at primary school, with young minds as they grow up. We've definitely got to deal with some of the poison that's on social media.
Yeah. What about the law and order aspect of just not letting violent men have access to weapons, and not letting them out on bail if it feels that there's problems at the top end when there's an idea. I mean, this
Yeah,
case that
for
we're all
sure.
talking about was just so, it so feels that it could have been prevented. What's going wrong with I guess that's a state and territory.
Well, it is partly, making sure you've got at that end everything working properly. And I think there's a very live discussion about bail laws. New South Wales has been having that discussion for a little while now. It's hard. Court, the court system, the kind of sentencing system, the bail system, it is a matter for state and territories. But we have a national plan to end gender violence against women and children. So it all kind of has to work together. Um, and I think one of the things, again, in the Commonwealth area of responsibility, when I sit down and talk to women who work in the space of women's safety, they will say we're so frustrated that the system doesn't talk to each other all the time. And so there are things that can be done and are being done now through the National Criminal Intelligence System. That means, if you've done something in Victoria and all of a sudden you pop up in Queensland and you're perpetrating violence against another woman, they can see that. Like
Yeah.
the system will talk to each other, so that woman doesn't have to go, and it doesn't look
Start
like
at the
you're getting
start
the
again.
first
Yeah.
AVO. And that you could build a kind of a risk assessment against, well, actually, it's not the first AVO for this guy, and he is escalating, and that requires a different response. So I think making sure all our information is talking to each other, and some of that's through the gun reform now as well that we passed through the Parliament last week. Will make sure that systems are much better equipped as we digitise. There's opportunity to make women safer, and there's that whole concept of safety by design, that when you're designing systems, you're actually thinking about how they would be weaponised. Whereas a lot of what I'm doing now is looking at systems that have been in place for a long time and
And
trying
how to
to
retrofit.
retrofit a
Yeah.
safety by design approach, which is harder.
Would you like to see more male leadership on violence against women? Because it feels like that we've been shouting and screaming and waving our arms around, distraught for decades, for centuries. What's it going to take?
I think I'm kind of influenced by the world I work in. So I see the PM giving speeches on this
Day after day.
regularly. I see, him having a national cabinet on it where all the premiers came and spoke about it. He led the rapid review into what needs to happen. We've put, over $4 billion into women's safety, which on one level people say is not enough. On another level, it's a lot of money that we're trying to go into an area we wish we didn't have to fund. And so I think all of that makes a difference. But I also think, we need male leaders to step up in every aspect of life, in sport, in
School.
pubs and clubs.
Yeah.
Like I was talking to the alcohol industry. Why is it that on these big sporting events, days, and you don't need to name any, but we can all think of them, does violence against women spike?
Yeah.
It has to have something to do with so how can the alcohol industry help and send messages out about, what's appropriate behaviour? Because we've got all the data. We know that when there's a big football match on, for many women, that's a terrifying event.
Yeah.
So I think it has to go everywhere we need. And it goes back to equality. If you don't have women sitting around your table making decisions with you, then you are perpetuating a system that's not working for everyone.
Two more questions and
Mm.
then I'll be done. I want to just talk to you about motherhood.
Mhm.
because we've been mums together
We have.
and we've gone
Our
down the
sons were born within weeks of each other, I
yeah,
remember.
yeah, and then we
Yeah.
had our daughters, and
I think I
what a
was,
wild ride it's been, hasn't it?
yeah, my Evie's 18, so she's a little older than you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my daughter's 16. It's
In the zone,
fun.
though,
Yeah.
of teenage girls. Shall we
We
laugh
can't
nervously?
go there on a podcast. If they find out, they'll kill us. Okay. I think the thing that I would like to know most about you, and I think a lot of her Canberra mums and readers and women and career women want to know, is how have you managed 3 kids, 2 dogs, a partnership, and the job? Like, I got asked the other day, how do you manage everything? And I said, at great personal expense. I have not slept, a proper night's sleep. I've aged prematurely because I'm just overloaded. It's not fun. I don't hold myself up as a poster
Yeah.
child for doing anything. Tell us, what would have made it easier? What are your biggest regrets and what have been your biggest joys just about being a mum of 3 with a peak period of professional responsibility?
Well, I think it's very similar to what you've just said for me. I mean, people, I think, look at me and think often, if they like me anyway. There's lots of people who look at me who don't like me, but the ones that like me, I think they look at me and think, wow, she's got it all together. But being honest about how mad things are and at times how overloaded and crazy things are, and being upfront about that is really important, because I just would hate to project this image that everything's just smooth, like my family chaos is like everyone else's family chaos. I got rid of mother guilt in 2011, 12, I think, that financial year. And it was when I had to arrange for a neighbour to go to Evie's Mother's Day breakfast at preschool, and I was sitting in the car park thinking, what have you become? Where you've moved beyond family, extended family. You're now grabbing neighbours to do the things, the Mother's Day breakfast. And then I just had this moment where I was like, oh, I can't do it. I can't beat myself up. It's just zapping all my energy. And so I thought, I'm not going to do it anymore. We're just going to deal with how we deal with this little, get this little show on the road. And that was enormously helpful to me. But yeah, I mean, what would have helped, I think, certainly someone running the home and all the sort of personal admin, school notes. I've just finished 24 years as a public school parent, and I'm so thankful that I don't have to fill out another permission note in my life. They nearly broke me, permission notes. You'd get everything else done, and then out of the bag comes like a wad of medical consent forms. And
Worse now is they're online, so you can easily just miss them, and you've got to log in.
Well,
you've got to
see,
log
that's
into the
wild.
stuff.
Yeah, it's too much.
Too much. A bridge too
I
far.
think I could have made things easier on myself too. I'm a control freak, and so I like doing things my way. And I think I could have asked more of others, to help. But because I either felt that was difficult for me because I didn't want to look like I couldn't do everything, and I'm a control freak, it meant that I took on much more than I needed to, probably, if I was honest about it.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I can deal with that because I still am that control freak.
You don't strike me. I'm a control freak, but you don't
Mm.
strike me as, you seem so much more chill.
Yeah, I don't think anyone, like I even when my kids are now cooking in the kitchen, I'll go, do you really want to cook it that way? Or,
Okay, that's me. That's absolutely
or
me.
how about we just take this off and I do it for you and you go and sit down. And it's like, Mum, I want to cook. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could have done all those things, but yeah, any idea that it was easy. I often joke with people that I was the ACT treasurer during the global financial crisis, and I also had Evie would have been 1, Charlie would have been 3, Abby would have been 13, and I pretty much don't remember 2007, 2008. And I was like,
What
but
happened?
I obviously had some very good advisors because we got through it okay here. But yeah, it's funny when you look back. And yeah, you miss out on, so I miss out on my friends. I miss out on things that are coming back to me now that I'm really loving, like time for yourself, the idea that you could go and sit at a cafe and just,
Mm.
check your emails and not have to worry about school pickups
Yeah,
and
because when
who's,
kids are little,
yeah,
they're just, it's all encompassing. I've thought of a question I forgot to ask you. What is the best thing about being over 50? Because there are some certain powers that we get.
there's this confidence in yourself. And so I think things like imposter syndrome and all that that kind of weigh you down at times, that's gone. Like you just don't have time for it. And
It's freeing though, isn't it?
it is, it's liberating. And the other thing I'm loving is having, um, it's almost going back to my pre-motherhood years of thinking about things I can do without thinking, oh, well, I'll have to buy 5 tickets for that. Like, and going to see my friends and being able to have a weekend away or catch up with them, go to the theatre, something like that.
Yeah, doing something for you and not
Yeah.
feeling that it's
And
selfish.
it's nice.
Yeah.
And it's nice not to worry about who's where. And I I think at Evie's 18th, I thought, this party is actually for me. Because, like, thanks everyone for coming to my party. Because it was the first
You
time
did.
that I didn't have a legally dependent child. I'll accept, I'm still looking after them, of course.
You
But
worry about them until you're
yeah, but
in the
it was just
grave.
this moment where it hadn't dawned on me till I was giving some remarks at her birthday to go, actually, I'm done. I've got 3 legal adults that I've taken from a hospital to here, and it's worked out okay,
Yeah.
sort of,
So there's light at the end of the tunnel.
definitely.